Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling, don't you? That undeniable pull when you pick up a game. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like an old board game that suddenly makes hours just melt away.
Yeah, or a video game.
Or,
Yeah.
that game on your phone, the one that just compels you to persist through those, well, frustrating challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating the tiny wins.
Right, and keep coming back, even when you probably should be doing, I don't know, laundry or something.
Yeah. There's definitely a power there. A sort of magnetic quality grabs our attention.
And holds it. That's the key part. So here's the really exciting question for us today. What if? What if we could harness that same incredible drive, that deep engagement for learning?
Especially maybe in an elementary classroom setting.
Exactly. Where capturing and holding attention, I mean, you know this,
Yeah,
it can sometimes feel like trying to catch a cloud, right?
it really can. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We're taking a deep look into this fascinating world of game-based learning and gamification. And our focus isn't just on the what, but really the why. Why does it work? And crucially, how can we apply it thoughtfully in educational settings?
Right.
And for you, listening, with your background in elementary education, well, these insights could be invaluable.
Yeah.
Really. Imagine transforming your classroom
Yeah.
into a space where learning feels as inherently engaging, as motivating as your student's favorite game.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about those moments in the classroom. The kids who just light up for certain things and others who, well, just don't. What is that secret ingredient?
Right.
If games are such master motivators, how can we actually harness that for sustained learning, especially with younger learners where attention can be so fleeting?
That's the mission.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to unpack the science behind it all, the foundations of motivation in games. And we'll be looking specifically through this really powerful framework called self-determination theory.
Self-determination theory.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to reveal how understanding these principles can genuinely transform educational experiences, make learning feel less like, a chore
Yeah.
and more like a really captivating quest.
I like that. A quest.
And we're not just talking abstract theory here.
Yeah.
We'll look at the specific psychological needs that games satisfy. And we'll illustrate with real concrete examples how you can bring these ideas to life right there in your elementary classroom.
Excellent. And where are we drawing these insights from today?
Our insights today come from a really foundational chapter. It's called Motivational Foundations of Game-Based Learning. It's by two leading experts, Richard M. Ryan and C. Scott Rigby.
Okay. Ryan and Rigby.
Yeah, and it's a key chapter in the Handbook of Game-Based Learning. It really lays out a clear, empirically grounded roadmap for making game-based learning not just fun.
Right, because fun isn't always enough.
Exactly, but genuinely effective.
Okay, so let's unpack this core idea then. We hear these terms all the time, right? Game-based learning, gamification, they get thrown around as the next big thing.
Buzzwords. Sometimes.
Buzzwords, yeah, promising revolutionary results, and maybe for good reason. There's clearly a promise there that goes way beyond just making things, quote-unquote, fun.
Definitely. It's not just about slapping points on a worksheet. There's a deeper science at play.
So what is that deeper science?
Well, think about the world we live in now. Attention. It's arguably one of our most valuable resources, we need to say.
Absolutely. And so scarce.
Incredibly scarce.
Wow.
We're constantly bombarded, phones buzzing, endless streams of content.
Yeah.
The competition for our attention is just immense.
It's like an attention economy, I've heard it called.
That's a great way to put it. An attention economy.
Yeah.
How many apps, websites, entertainment options are vying for focus every single day? It's staggering.
And somehow, in the middle of all this noise, games, especially video games, have become incredibly successful models.
That's right.
It's not just that they grab attention, they hold it. They foster this long-term engagement, this loyalty, in a way that many other things just struggle to.
Rigby pointed this out back in 2014, called Video Games, Role Models for Engaging Learners and Consumers.
Role models. Interesting.
Yeah. You see people dedicating countless hours to games, even when, like you said, the real world has plenty of other demands. It's quite remarkable.
So the fascinating question is why? Why are games so uniquely positioned to do this? It can't just be the entertainment value, can it? Or the flashy graphics?
No, it goes deeper than that. It's about their inherent design, the actual structure of the game, how they're built to induce people, whether they're employees or students or consumers, to persist. to keep going at activities long enough for important stuff, information, practices, skills, to be properly assimilated.
So they're designed for persistence.
At their core, you could say games are a kind of motivational intervention. They're designed to keep you engaged, even when the task itself might be challenging or repetitive or require real effort. They don't just entertain, they sort of compel.
Okay, so what does that mean for learning, especially thinking about, an elementary classroom?
Well, if we can tap into that inherent engagement, that persistence, imagine the potential for sustained learning.
Right.
We know attention spans could be a real challenge with young learners. They get distracted easily. Keeping them on task, a constant effort.
So if games build that deep, sustained persistence, that willingness to keep trying even after failing.
It's potentially a huge step forward, especially for foundational learning.
Yeah.
And there's more. Beyond just persistence, there's this deeper hope with game-based learning. Games can produce a really high quality of engagement.
High quality, what does that mean exactly?
That's not just passive viewing, or superficial clicking. It involves intense personal involvement, deep concentration.
Like a kid completely lost in a puzzle, or building something amazing with Legos.
Exactly, that kind of focus, that profound effort. When you apply that to learning content, well, it suggests that thoughtfully designed game-based learning could lead to deeper processing of information.
So better retention, more effective learning.
That's the idea, more lasting learning outcomes.
You definitely see that in successful video games, don't you? They have these features, highly interactive, lots of choices, ways to feel competent. They don't just throw information at you, they invite you to do something.
Right. Make decisions, challenge yourself. It's not accidental. It's by design. They're built from the ground up to draw you in and keep you there. Not just watching, but actively participating.
So effective gamification. It isn't just about making things superficially fun or, like you said, adding badges to a worksheet without thinking it through.
Precisely. It's about crafting experiences that genuinely enhance the efficacy of teaching or training efforts.
Making the learning itself compelling.
Yes, and seamlessly integrated into that engaging experience. It's a subtle difference, maybe, but a really critical one.
But, and this seems like a really big but, that the source is stress.
It is.
Many efforts to use games in education or to gamify learning, they actually fail at these goals.
They do. It's unfortunately common.
So it's not a magic bullet. You can't just plug in a game or add some game mechanics and automatically expect better engagement or learning outcomes.
No, it's far more nuanced.
Yeah.
Van Roy and Zaman highlighted this back in 2017. Poorly implemented game features can actually do the opposite of what you intend.
How so? What can go wrong?
Well, for instance, they might encourage people to game the games.
Game the games. You mean like find shortcuts?
Exactly. Or just give answers they think are desired, or the ones being reinforced,
Right.
rather than truly engaging with the content itself.
Oh, I've definitely seen that. Like with some math apps, right? A student just clicks B over and over to get through the activity.
Yeah.
Not because they're learning multiplication facts, but because B seems to come up a lot, or they just want to get to the fun part after the practice.
That's a perfect example. Or maybe they try to find the fastest way to get dessert without eating their vegetables, or gaming the system of dinner.
Okay, I get it. So that's one pitfall. What else?
Well, on the other hand, the gamified elements can sometimes make people feel manipulated or controlled or just distracted from the actual meaningful learning the game is supposed to promote. If a student feels like they're just jumping through hoops for a sticker or a virtual coin,
Instead of genuinely learning something.
right, then the effort backfires. They start seeing the external reward as the goal, not the learning itself.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think, and super crucial for educators.
It is.
Success requires way more than just injecting game dynamics into a lesson. It really hinges on how.
Yes. How things like rewards or social comparisons or competitive structures or other incentives, common game elements, how they're introduced and what they're made contingent upon.
So they can either help or hurt.
Profoundly. They can either enhance intrinsic motivation and real learning, or they can severely undermine it.
And the sources are clear on this.
Absolutely. Many efforts just aren't informed by established motivational principles. They skip that essential foundation.
Which is exactly why we need to dive into those principles now.
And that brings us perfectly to the foundational framework, the theory that guides this whole discussion and gives us that crucial roadmap. Self-determination theory, SDT.
Okay, SDT. Why is this theory so important here?
Because it's paramount for understanding why games are so motivating in the first place. and just as importantly, how to apply those principles thoughtfully, effectively, to education.
Right. So let's start with the absolute core concept, intrinsic motivation. What exactly is that, and why is it such a powerhouse for learning?
So intrinsic motivation, Ryan and Basie defined it back in 2000. It's basically doing an activity purely for its inherent interest or enjoyment.
Okay. Doing it for the love of it.
Pretty much, it's about the experience of the activity itself being inherently rewarding. You see it when people persist at something, even when there are no external rewards.
Yeah.
Prizes, no grades.
Like a kid building a block tower. They're not doing it for a gold star, right? They're doing it for the joy of building the challenge.
Exactly. The satisfaction of seeing their creation grow. Or think of an adult spending hours painting or coding or playing music just because they love doing it. That's intrinsic motivation in action.
It feels like a really natural, evolved thing, like an innate drive we have to explore, to understand our surroundings, to use our abilities just for the pleasure of it.
That's a great way to think about it. It really underlies so much of early human development. Just watch any toddler explore their world.
Totally.
And it continues to drive significant learning throughout our lives, in classrooms, in workplaces, fueled by genuine curiosity and interest.
Is there a brain connection here too? Does something happen neurologically?
Oh, absolutely. There's a fascinating neuroscientific link. Intrinsic motivation is associated with activations in the brain's dopaminergic pathways.
Dopamine, the pleasure chemical.
Exactly. Linked to pleasure and reward. So in simpler terms, when we're genuinely interested and engaged in something, our brains are literally releasing chemicals that make the process itself feel good.
Wow, so it's a natural internal reward system?
Precisely. It encourages us to keep exploring, keep learning, keep strengthening those neural connections. And it also makes us more sensitive to feedback, both positive feedback and errors, which is crucial for effective learning loops. Our brains are essentially designed to reward us for engaging with the world.
Okay, now, this next part is really fascinating and maybe a bit counterintuitive for a lot of us, myself included, when I first learned about it. We're often taught, especially as educators, to use rewards to motivate students. Stickers, points, prize boxes, pizza parties.
Standard practice in many places.
But decades of research actually show that external rewards can, counterintuitively, undermine intrinsic motivation, and even those brain activations you mentioned.
It's a critical finding, really emphasized by researchers like Rees and Lee and Ryan and Deci more recently. It's especially true when rewards are used explicitly in a controlling way.
Controlling? Like how?
Think about those clear if-then scenarios. If you finish this worksheet, then you get a sticker.
Right.
Or if you get an A, then you get $5. That's using the reward to control the behavior.
So why? Why would a reward, something we think of as positive, actually hurt motivation? This feels like it goes against so much common wisdom in education.
The core reason, according to SDT, is that external rewards, especially when they feel controlling, diminish a person's sense of autonomy.
Autonomy, okay.
Think about that child building the block tower again. When they're captivated, they're driven by an internal desire, the joy of creating, the challenge.
Right, purely internal.
But if you suddenly offer a sticker for every single block they add, their focus shifts instantly.
They're not building for the joy anymore.
Exactly, they're building for the sticker. And that subtle shift makes them feel less in control of their own actions, more like they're performing for the reward. It kind of drains the intrinsic pleasure out of it, as Deci and others showed way back in 1999. It narrows their focus to less exploration, more just getting the reward.
So the alternative strategy isn't necessarily no structure, but creating contexts that actively support autonomy.
That's the key. Things like providing genuine choice whenever possible, minimizing the emphasis on external rewards and evaluations, allowing students a sense of ownership over their work.
Or maybe providing a clear, meaningful reason why an activity is important, not just because I said so.
Absolutely. A meaningful rationale connects the task to their values or goals. When you do these things, intrinsic motivation can actually be enhanced, not diminished. It's about shifting that locus of control from external pressures to internal drives.
Okay, this makes so much sense. It feels like the bedrock understanding we need.
It really is. And this leads us straight to the heart of self-determination theory. It's three basic psychological needs.
Three needs. Okay.
SDT posits that intrinsic motivation, that powerful natural drive, is a direct function of satisfying these three core needs. Ryan and Dieck laid this out clearly in 2000 and elaborated in 2017. When these needs are met, people don't just engage. Their motivation flourishes, their learning deepens, and frankly, their overall well-being improves. They're essential nutrients for psychological growth.
Let's dive into each one then, because understanding these feels absolutely fundamental for anyone wanting to unlock game-based learning. First up, competence.
Competence. This is all about feeling effective,
Yeah.
feeling mastery over tasks. It's that wonderful sensation of, I can do this, or, hey, I'm actually getting better at this.
That feeling of capability.
Yes, when you feel capable, like you're making progress, improving at something, that's competent satisfaction. And it's profoundly enhanced by settings that provide rich, affectance-relevant feedback.
Affectance-relevant feedback. What does that mean?
Think of it less like getting a grade on a paper 2 weeks later. That's evaluative, often delayed. Think more like a coach giving immediate pointers. Great swing, kept your eye on the ball, or footwork was a bit off there. Try planting your left foot first.
Ah, so it's immediate informational, tells you how to improve, not just what you got wrong.
Exactly. It helps you understand how to adjust, how to get better. It's not about judgment. It's about guidance.
Yeah.
Activities that offer challenges that are barely manageable.
Not too easy, not too hard. That sweet spot.
Precisely. The sweet spot of growth.
Yeah.
Plus, clear nearby goals and that immediate feedback we mentioned. Those are key. They allow for that fantastic feeling of leveling up your skills.
Okay, I can totally picture this in an elementary classroom. Imagine, say, a digital literacy game for first graders learning letter sounds.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for a weekly quiz, every time they correctly identify a sound, they get maybe an immediate, cheerful sound, a little sparkle on the screen.
Instant feedback. Nice.
And maybe a clear progress bar shows them they've mastered, 5 out of 10 sounds for the week. So they see themselves leveling up their reading skills.
That tangible sense of progress.
Yeah.
Very motivating.
And the challenges are designed to be just hard enough to be engaging, but not so hard that they get totally frustrated. So they're always feeling that little edge of success. They know what to do next.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Immediate informational feedback, supporting competence, fueling that intrinsic motivation. Okay, the next crucial need is autonomy.
Autonomy. We touched on this. It's about feeling like you have a choice, right? Feeling volitional, self-regulating in your actions.
Exactly. It's that feeling of ownership, having a say in what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's the opposite of feeling pressured or controlled or micromanaged.
Which is exactly what those controlling external rewards undermine.
Right. Autonomy is powerfully supported by providing genuine choice, allowing for ownership of tasks,
Right.
or, as you mentioned, offering a meaningful rationale for why an activity matters, why it's relevant to them.
It's not about total chaos, letting kids do anything.
No, definitely not. It's about giving them a meaningful, say, a genuine degree of freedom within a clear, structured, purposeful environment, feeling like you're the author of your own actions, even within certain boundaries.
Okay, let's translate that to elementary. Maybe a science project on ecosystems.
How would that work?
Instead of assigning everyone the rainforest, maybe let students choose. Pick the ecosystem they want to explore. Maybe a local forest or the desert or the ocean, whatever sparks their interest.
Okay, choice of topic, good start.
And then, to deepen that ownership, offer different ways to present what they learned. They could draw it with labels, make a short video, maybe even do a puppet show about their ecosystem.
Choice of how to demonstrate learning too.
Right. It empowers their sense of ownership, lets them direct their learning journey within clear boundaries, choose how they express their understanding, not just what they learn.
That personal investment is huge. It shifts the mindset from I have to do this to I want to do this and I get to choose how. Okay, number 3, relatedness.
Relatedness, feeling connected, right, significant to other people, that sense of belonging.
Yes, feeling valued within a group, a classroom, a community. Humans are fundamentally social creatures. This need speaks directly to that drive to connect.
And how does this boost intrinsic motivation?
It's especially effective when people can cooperate on tasks, help each other out, pursue common goals together.
So collaboration over competition.
Often, yes. Rather than just competing or getting caught up in social comparisons, which can sometimes be detrimental. When students feel they're part of a team, working towards something together, where their individual contribution actually matters to the group's success, that's relatedness, fueling motivation.
Okay, how would that look in an elementary setting? Designing for connection and shared purpose.
Well, imagine designing, say, a classroom community garden game. Maybe it's digital, maybe it's a big chart on the wall.
Okay.
Students collectively earn virtual seeds, or maybe real tokens, by completing their individual learning tasks, mastering math, facts, reading books, whatever. That part fosters competence.
Right. Individual achievement.
But then they plant these seeds in a shared garden that the whole class contributes to. And teamwork is explicitly required to nurture it.
How?
Maybe they have to water the garden by collaborating on writing a class story, each adding a sentence.
Yep.
Or fertilize it by peer tutoring a math concept, helping a classmate understand something tricky.
Ah, so helping each other helps the whole garden grow.
Exactly. The game or the activity could even assign specific group roles to make sure everyone feels they have a unique, meaningful contribution, facilitating cooperation, making sure every child feels needed for the shared success of their classroom community.
That's a brilliant way to weave individual learning into a collective purpose. It really shows how these three needs, competence, autonomy, relatedness, aren't just abstract ideas, they're actionable levers for design.
Absolutely. Which leads us directly to how this applies specifically to games. The PENS model.
PENS. Okay, what does that stand for?
Player Experience of Need Satisfaction. PENS. It was developed specifically to investigate how successful digital games support competence, autonomy, and relatedness.
So it directly links SDT to game design.
Precisely. It helps explain their incredibly engaging properties, that powerful desire people have to play games. It isn't just because they're fun in some vague way.
It's because they satisfy these basic psychological needs.
Powerfully and consistently. PENS shows how specific, concrete factors within successful games make that happen.
So things like controls that are easy to learn, making you feel capable right away, clear, consistent feedback on everything you do, choices about goals and strategies, opportunities to play with others cooperatively.
Those are all prime examples. Those are the fundamental elements driven by need satisfaction that make games so captivating.
Now, there's a really interesting insight from PNS you mentioned, motivational efficiency. What's that about?
Right. The authors talk about players being brutally efficient in pursuing internal rewards.
Brutally efficient.
Yeah. When playing, people automatically, maybe unconsciously, optimize their efforts. They only pursue content and experiences that actually afford them need satisfaction. They're constantly seeking that hit of competence, that feeling of autonomy, that connection.
Okay, so what does that mean for putting learning into games, especially for, say, an elementary student who's very direct about what feels fun or boring?
It means the learning material cannot just be loosely tacked on nearby.
Yeah.
Like the game isn't just a sugary coating around a bitter pill of learning.
Right.
If the learning itself isn't part of the satisfaction loop within the game, if doing the learning doesn't directly lead to feeling more competent or autonomous in the game, then it won't benefit.
So the game part just becomes a competitor for attention.
Exactly. A powerful competitor. Imagine a kid doing a worksheet math problem, then getting to play a cool mini game as a reward.
Yeah.
The math is separate. It's a hurdle. The mini game is the real reward, the thing providing the satisfaction. The learning isn't integrated.
Ah, okay. So you can't just stick a math quiz next to a racing game and expect kids to magically love the math because the game is fun.
Pretty much. The math itself has to be part of the fun, or part of the game's challenge, or maybe even the key to solving a problem or progressing within the game world.
The learning needs to be the player's ally.
That's a great way to put it. The player needs to see a clear reason within the game's rules for success to engage with the learning content. That content has to help them achieve satisfaction of competence, autonomy, or relatedness within the game.
Which makes the learning itself intrinsically interesting, not just a toll you pay to have fun.
Exactly. It's not about making learning fun. It's about making the act of learning feel rewarding and engaging in its own right, just like good gameplay does.
This feels like a real light bulb moment for educators, shifting focus from external stuff to designing for that inherent engagement.
It's a fundamental shift.
Let's look at how successful games actually do this, implementing these need satisfactions, with some clear parallels for an elementary classroom, starting with competence supports.
Okay. In games, strong competence feedback is absolutely everywhere. Pervasive.
Like leveling up.
That's the classic example. It's not just a number going up. It provides a tangible sense of growth, of efficacy, especially when leveling up comes with new abilities, more power, new skills, faster movement.
Right, you feel more competent.
Definitely. Games also offer clear goals, immediate and frequent feedback on a very granular level. Think on-screen effects, points flashing, satisfying sounds for correct actions.
Little dopamine hits.
Kind of, yeah. And also cumulative feedback progress bars, maps showing how far you've come. This creates a sustained feeling of mastery. You always know where you stand and what's next.
And players can often choose the difficulty, right? Find their own sweet spot.
Yes, optimizing their own challenge level for maximum competence satisfaction. Challenged but not overwhelmed.
Okay, so how do we translate that feeling of continuous leveling up into, say, an elementary reading program?
Well, you could structure it so students literally level up. Maybe from Word Explorer to Sentence Master to Story Weaver.
I like those names.
And they level up by hitting clear, measurable goals, like correctly reading 20 new sight words gets you to the next level. Then maybe composing 5 simple sentences using those words gets you further.
Okay, clear goals.
And each correct answer gets immediate positive reinforcement. A little chime, a virtual coin, a star animation, whatever works. Instant feedback.
And maybe a visual progress tracker, like a map on the wall or a digital dashboard?
Exactly. A visual map showing their journey through the reading lands shows cumulative progress. And for autonomy within competence, maybe let them choose easy, medium, or hard word lists based on how confident they feel.
So they manage their own challenge level, builds confidence.
Precisely. It mirrors that game mechanic beautifully, fostering continuous progress. Okay, next, autonomy supports.
Autonomy. Choice and control. How do games do this well?
Modern games offer incredibly deep autonomy satisfactions now. Think about avatar personalization.
Choosing how you look, your character type.
Gender, powers, clothes, playing style. It's highly personalized. Then there's choice over what you do in the game. Activities, goals, strategies.
Those big open world games like Minecraft or Zelda.
Perfect examples. They offer exploration, discovery, and the chance to create a really unique personal story where your choices have visible consequences. Layered goals emerge from your actions.
You mentioned Civilization and Minecraft satisfying autonomy by just setting players loose in these worlds of possibility.
Right. And even games like Grand Theft Auto, which gets a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
The research suggests its popularity isn't primarily about the violence.
Really? What is it then?
It's about the freedom, the feeling that you can do whatever you please within that virtual world. It's that sandbox idea, but a sandbox with compelling structure and objectives.
Marrying choice with structure, where choices matter.
Exactly. So for an elementary classroom example of autonomy support, how about that cultural learning unit again?
Okay. How could we build in autonomy there?
First, maybe let students design their own explorer avatar. Draw it, name it, give it special explorer tools.
Fun. Personalization right away.
Then let them choose which region of the world their avatar explores first, which culture they dive into.
Choice of content.
And within that region, offer various quests, like discover traditional foods and draw a recipe, or learn a greeting and record yourself saying it, or research a landmark and build a model. And let them choose the order they tackle these quests.
So it mirrors that structured but free exploration of open world games, giving them real control over their learning path and how they show what they know.
Perfect. Meaningful choice within a guiding framework. Okay, finally, relatedness supports.
Relatedness. Connection. How do games foster that? Early games were pretty solitary.
True, but popular modern games, increasingly designed for multiplayer, actively encouraging communication, cooperation, team play, often with different roles so players depend on each other.
Like in online games where you need a healer, a tank, etc.
Exactly. Differentiated roles foster interdependence. But even in single-player games, non-player characters, NPCs, can foster relatedness.
How?
If they interact contingently, applaud your accomplishments, offer helpful advice, maybe join you on a task, it makes the player feel seen, part of a responsive world. And just giving players chances to be helpful to others, even NPCs, enhances relatedness satisfaction.
And what about the social aspect outside the game itself, like with Minecraft?
Huge factor. The sources highlight how Minecraft's success is massively amplified by social networking. Players share creations, trade tips, collaborate on huge projects online.
So that provides avenues for all three needs.
Absolutely. Competence,
Yeah.
showing off your cool build, autonomy, discovering new ideas and creative freedom, and relatedness, connecting with other players, working together. It's a powerful ecosystem.
Okay, so how do we bring that sense of connection, shared purpose, collaboration into an elementary classroom activity?
Well, take a collaborative science experiment. Instead of everyone doing the exact same steps individually,
Yeah.
assign different complementary roles. Like one student is the materials manager, another is the data recorder, another the hypothesis helper.
So each role is critical for the group to succeed, fosters interdependence.
Precisely. Or imagine a class-wide virtual history simulation. Students work in small groups within this simulation. Maybe there are historical NPCs, a digital guide, a virtual town elder who respond to the group's collective decisions and give them quests that require group cooperation to solve, like figuring out a historical riddle together or collectively deciding how to build a virtual settlement.
So their actions matter to others in the simulation.
Right, reinforces that connection.
Yeah.
And to mimic that Minecraft social sharing, encourage groups to share their final projects, the science presentation, the historical model with other classes, or maybe present them online if appropriate. Build a broader community around their learning. Celebrate shared achievements.
That's a fantastic way to build teamwork and belonging. Now, you mentioned something earlier. The way games deliver these needs is also crucial. Immediacy, consistency, density.
Absolutely key. Rigby and Ryan stressed this back in 2011. Unlike many real-world domains, especially traditional school setups, virtual environments are just uniquely designed to offer these intrinsic need satisfactions with immediacy, consistency, and density.
Okay, let's break those down. They sound powerful. Immediacy.
Little to no delay between your action and the feedback or outcome. You press jump, you jump. Instantly. You solve the puzzle piece, it clicks into place. Right away.
No waiting around. Got it. Consistency.
This means games reliably deliver feedback and consequences according to clear, defined rules. The world is predictable and fair, in a way.
So if you learn the rules, the game follows them every time.
Right. Pressing A always does the same thing. Collecting 100 coins always gives you an extra life. This predictability builds trust and a clear understanding of how things work.
Okay. And density.
This refers to the rate of need satisfaction. Successful games provide a really high frequency of these satisfying moments.
So you're constantly getting little hits of competence or autonomy or relatedness.
Exactly. It's not rare. It's woven into almost every interaction. Every few seconds, maybe, you experience a small win, make a meaningful choice, interact positively. It's dense.
Wow. Immediacy, consistency, density, those three together, that explains a lot about why games are so gripping.
It's a huge part of it. And it represents a massive promise for game-based learning. It's kind of a blueprint for designing captivating learning experiences.
Because if you contrast that with traditional learning, the difference is pretty stark, isn't it?
Often, yes. Traditional learning can have ambiguous success criteria. Am I doing well? What does a B actually mean about my understanding?
Right, and the feedback, it's often not very informative or timely.
Think about getting a grade, just a number or letter, maybe 2 weeks after you handed in a paper.
Yeah, it tells you the result, maybe, but not really how to improve. And it's certainly not immediate, doesn't always foster that sense of mastery or choice.
It can feel more like an external judgment than an internal guide for growth.
So game mechanics, if applied artfully, can bring that immediacy, consistency, and density into learning.
That's the potential, leading to more effective engagement, deeper learning, because the learner is constantly being supported and rewarded by the process itself. Competence, autonomy, relatedness become these powerful internal rewards, driving exploration, persistence, cooperation. The learning environment itself becomes a vibrant feedback loop.
This connects to another fascinating idea, immersion. Good games are incredibly immersive, right?
Totally. Players get so engaged, they kind of forget they're even in a game. The medium itself seems to disappear. Lombard and Ditton called this the illusion of non-mediation back in '97.
Like watching a really compelling movie, you forget you're in a cinema, you're just in the story.
Exactly that feeling. You're reacting as if it's real.
And the PENS model connects this immersion directly to need satisfaction.
It does. It identifies different dimensions of immersion, like narrative immersion, lost in the story, emotional immersion, feeling authentic emotions, physical immersion. The world feels real enough to act in.
And the key finding here seems really practical, especially for educators working with limited budgets. Immersion isn't necessarily about super fancy, expensive graphics.
It's a critical point Ryan and his colleagues made in 2006. Immersion is less about graphic realism and more about the game responsively, contingently satisfying those core needs, especially autonomy and competence.
So if the game gives you meaningful choices and you consistently feel effective, capable, you'll be absorbed, regardless of whether it looks photorealistic.
That's what the research suggests. If those needs are thwarted, If you feel controlled, incapable, disconnected, you're much more likely to break immersion. You start noticing the game mechanics, the interface. You disengage.
You see the wires and strings.
Right. But if you consistently feel autonomy and competence, making choices that matter, mastering challenges, you stay deeply immersed. The game becomes this seamless extension of your own motivation.
Okay, all this background, all this theory. It brings us to a really fundamental principle for designing effective game-based learning. But it sounds a bit counterintuitive. Learning as the goal, not the focus.
It does sound a bit paradoxical, doesn't it? But it's essential. And it's where many serious games or gamified learning efforts unfortunately stumble.
How so? What's the common mistake?
The misconception is that since learning is the ultimate goal, it needs to be the central, explicit focus of the activity.
So they take the learning outcome like math facts and just kind of insert it into a game, often as a gatekeeper.
Exactly. Do these 10 math problems, then you get to play the fun racing part. Or answer this history question correctly to unlock the next level.
And people, especially kids, are really good at spotting when they're being manipulated, aren't they?
They really are. Flanagan put it brilliantly in 2009. In play, the aim is play itself, not success or interaction in ordinary life. When you dangle rewards like a treasure chest of badges for solving an algebra problem or making kids do boring drills to unlock a cool character, it just screams, this game is trying to make me learn.
Which immediately feels controlling.
Yes, and undermines that autonomous engagement we want. The learning isn't really part of the game, it's just a hurdle you have to jump over to get to the fun.
And there's evidence for this, that extraneous rewards don't help engagement.
Strong evidence. McKernan and colleagues, for instance, showed in 2015 that adding those kinds of external, unrelated rewards did nothing for learner engagement. Why? Because deep engagement comes from rewarding experiences, from the intrinsic satisfaction of doing the thing, not from getting rewarded for doing it.
If the learning activity itself isn't rewarding, slapping a badge on it won't magically fix it.
Exactly. You can't just wrap fun around learning. The learning has to become part of the engaging experience itself.
So what's the better strategy then for game-based learning initiatives, especially if we're aiming for that lifelong love of learning in elementary kids?
The better, more effective strategy is to keep the basic needs as the focus, designed for confidence, autonomy, and relatedness first.
Okay.
In truly good educational games, people choose to learn the material autonomously because doing so directly helps them achieve greater mastery or better performance within the game's context.
So learning helps them win the game or explore further or build something cooler?
Precisely. If the focus is on the game experience and enhancing that experience in meaningful ways through the learning, then you open up huge opportunities for highly motivating experiences, the very things that keep people glued to great entertainment games. That's also what can deepen their interest, learning, and performance in an educational context. The learning isn't separate, it's woven into the fabric of the compelling gameplay.
You mentioned the serious game Darfur is Dying as an example.
Yes. It's a tough game, its difficulty might deter some, but its learning impact doesn't come from explicit lessons tacked on. It comes from the embedded struggle.
The experience is the learning.
Exactly. Experiencing those challenges, making those difficult choices. That gives players a visceral perspective on life in Sudan. The endless challenges are the inherent learning. It's meaningful because it connects to deep human experiences and needs.
So learning becomes interesting, maybe even fun, when it has functional significance within the game, when it directly links to satisfying those needs.
That's the key. And conversely, when game designs rely too heavily on controlling elements, external evaluations, extrinsic rewards just for participation, leaderboards focus solely on beating others, they can unintentionally signal that the learning itself isn't inherently interesting.
Which undermines intrinsic motivation.
Right. In a well-designed educational game, the learning ideally becomes its own reward. It's the path to greater confidence, more autonomy, better connection within the world of the game itself.
This ties in really nicely with another big idea from education research: the difference between mastery goals and performance goals.
Absolutely. Educational research consistently finds that focusing on mastery goals,
Like improving your own skills, understanding things deeply, personal growth.
right, that's generally much more effective for engaging students and promoting long-term learning than focusing solely on performance goals.
Which are more about like doing better than others, getting the highest grade, being top of the leaderboard.
Exactly. And guess what? Good video games naturally align with this optimal, mastery-focused approach.
How so?
Their structures are typically engineered to let players see their own progress, visualize their growth in skills, achievements, capacities. It's almost always about your individual journey, overcoming your challenges, even in multiplayer games.
The leveling mechanic, again, seems like a perfect example of supporting mastery.
It really is. It scaffolds that incremental growth. New abilities, new opportunities unlock as you improve. It provides clear long-term goals, the next level, alongside that immediate feedback on every little step.
And these rewards, the leveling up, the new skills, they function within the game's logic. They're not external stickers.
Crucially, yes. They're experiential rewards integral to the game, unlike those external contingent incentives that can undermine intrinsic motivation. The whole system customizes the experience to be mastery-oriented, not performance-oriented. You don't fail a level and get a bad grade. You learn from the failure, retry, and eventually overcome it.
Okay, let's adapt that high school example from the source, the first things first approach, for an elementary classroom. How could we use that leveling, mastery-focused idea?
Okay, imagine a second-grade math class. Instead of units ending in a big test, you reframe skills as math missions.
Math missions, I like it.
So instead of an addition test, students have an I can add two-digit numbers with regrouping mission. They work through interactive problems related to that skill, maybe on a tablet or worksheet, and they get immediate feedback on each step. Green check for correct, maybe a little hint or prompt if incorrect.
Immediate informational feedback. Check.
And you have a visual mission control chart, maybe on the wall, maybe digital. It shows their personal progress for each specific mission, each skill.
So they see themselves mastering things.
Exactly. And when they master a mission, they level up to the next one. Maybe that unlocks new math superpowers, access to harder problem types, a fun virtual item, maybe a special calculator tool just for checking work.
Fun rewards tied to mastery.
Yes. And if they struggle with a mission, they don't get a failing grade. They visit the math help desk, which could be you, the teacher, or maybe a peer tutor corner. They get support, practice, and then they can retry the mission as many times as needed until they achieve mastery.
Wow, that system totally shifts the focus. It's all about persistence, personal growth, developing skills, not just comparing yourself to others. Builds real competence.
It's a pure mastery system. And it highlights that key takeaway. Game designs are inherently forgiving. Failure in games is usually small, temporary. You lose a life, restart the level, respawn.
It's rarely demeaning or permanently damaging like a bad grade can feel.
Right. Games reward retries and persistence rather than punishing early attempts. Educators, I think, have a lot to learn from these less controlling, more forgiving, mastery-focused frameworks that are just built into good game design. Hashtag A6. Future directions and lasting impact.
This has been incredibly insightful. So as we look ahead, thinking about the future, what are some key directions or lasting impacts of this whole approach for education, particularly for those of us working with elementary learners?
Well, first, there's that ongoing challenge, integrating accountability without killing motivation.
Right. Schools often need ways to track progress, show accountability, maybe through grades or reports. But as we've seen, that can easily threaten intrinsic motivation if it feels controlling.
Exactly. But games offer potential solutions here. They demonstrate how accessible informational feedback on progress, showing exactly what skills you've mastered, where you are on your journey, can actually enhance feelings of competence and mastery.
While also serving as markers of progress.
Precisely. These game mechanics, clear progress bars, skill trees showing mastery, detailed feedback can really inform how schools approach evaluation. Imagine moving more towards mastery-based reporting, where reports detail the specific skills a student has mastered, rather than just a single letter grade averaging everything together.
That aligns perfectly with the game design idea. You've mastered these skills. You've unlocked the next set of challenges. Much more informative and motivating.
It really is. That's one practical application. Second, there's the need for more research into the underlying mechanisms, understanding the mechanisms of enhancement.
Meaning, how exactly does satisfying these needs translate into better learning in the brain?
Yeah. We have strong evidence connecting these motivational elements to broad learning outcomes, but we need more experimental work on the microcognitive underpinnings, the specific neural mechanisms. How does need satisfaction change attention allocation, memory encoding, emotional regulation during learning?
And games are good for studying this.
Ideal, really, because in a game-based learning context, you can readily manipulate specific elements experimentally, change the timing of feedback, vary the amount of choice, Alter the social context.
And then see what happens, maybe using brain imaging.
Exactly. Use tools like fMRI or EEG to observe brain activity directly. This can give us incredibly valuable insights into how different design choices impact the brain's learning processes, guiding us to create even more effective experiences.
Fascinating stuff. What else?
Third, understanding the interplay of the needs.
Meaning competence, autonomy, and relatedness don't just work in isolation.
Research consistently shows learning is better sustained, performance is enhanced, when learners feel not just competent, but also autonomous and connected. These needs likely interact in complex ways.
So more research is needed on how they work together.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do autonomy, relatedness, and competence independently and interactively contribute to motivation and learning outcomes in game-based contexts? For example, does competence feedback have a bigger impact if it's delivered within a supportive group, relatedness,
Right.
or if the learner chose the task, autonomy?
Games seem like a great place to test those interactions.
Unique opportunities for controlled experiments to explore these synergistic relationships, helping us find the optimal blend of need support for different learners and different learning goals.
You know, what's really striking is how enduring this model seems to be. Technology changes so fast, especially in education. VR, AR, AI.
But human psychology is much more constant.
Right, and that's the fourth point, that this framework is agnostic to technology and resilient to change.
That's a really powerful aspect. This motivational model, rooted in SDT and applied through PES, has stayed remarkably relevant and predictive in the super dynamic field of video games for well over 15 years now.
Even with mobile games, social networking, VRR becoming huge.
Yes. The framework is fundamentally about basic human needs. It's agnostic to the specific technology or design features, which means it can be readily applied to understand and enhance engagement and learning in new and emerging technologies too.
It provides a stable lens through which to evaluate any new ed tech tool or approach.
Exactly. The underlying needs for confidence, autonomy, and relatedness don't change just because the screen gets bigger or you put on a headset.
So bringing it all together, what's the enduring goal here for educators, for those of us in the trenches trying to make learning meaningful for elementary students every day?
Well, the enduring goal has always been to actively engage learners, right? To
Yeah.
foster greater persistence, deeper understanding.
That's the dream.
Game-based learning, when it's truly informed by these psychological principles we've discussed, offers so many powerful opportunities for learning that is agentic.
Meaning autonomous, self-directed.
Yes, and highly interactive. This adds significant value beyond just traditional methods. A clear focus on fostering intrinsic motivation, on satisfying these basic human needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness that can powerfully guide designers in building better tools and features.
And it empowers educators, too.
Absolutely. It empowers educators like you to apply these motivational best practices, whether you're using a fancy new technology or designing a simple classroom activity. It's ultimately about designing for the fundamental human experience of learning, not just delivering content more efficiently. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, that really brings it all home. And sadly brings us to the end of this deep dive. We've taken quite a journey, haven't we, into these powerful psychological principles, competence, autonomy, relatedness that make games so incredibly captivating. And we've seen how they're not just, academic buzzwords. They are real, actionable insights for designing truly engaging learning experiences, especially for our younger students in elementary classrooms.
So as you, our listener, look at your lesson plans, your activities, maybe think about bringing in some game-based learning or gamified elements. Try not to just ask, how can I make this fun?
Right, because fun is a good start, maybe, but it can be superficial. It might miss those deeper psychological drivers we talked about.
Asking only about fun can lead you down the path of just adding external rewards rather than fostering that deeper intrinsic motivation.
So instead of just how to make it fun, push yourself further. Ask the deeper questions.
Like, how can I design this so that every child feels that genuine sense of mastery, that feeling of growing competence over new challenges?
How can I offer them real choice, a sense of ownership in their learning journey?
And how can I foster those meaningful connections with peers? Create that sense of shared purpose, belonging, relatedness.
Ultimately, how can I make the learning itself feel like the greatest, most compelling reward?
Asking those kinds of questions, that's what can truly transform your approach, unlocking powerful, lasting engagement and really profound learning for your students.
That is a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep making learning the most rewarding game of all.